Wow, another weekend, another fight card from the UFC Vegas 30, and well, just get straight into it. I should have made this podcast a few days ago, but for some reason my laptop crashed and just a little BS that happened. But yeah, the two fights that got my interest: CYRILGANE versus ALEXANDERVOLKOV, the main event for the heavyweight division. The fight more or less went the way that I thought it would, because I compared it in reference to but I made a comparison there to the Volkov versus Overeem fights that recently happened just earlier this year, and the reason why I say that is because, in my own personal opinion, Gane has a very similar overall stature and physique to that of Overeem. He's of a similar height and a similar build. And when I was making my fight predictions for Overeem versus Volkov, I thought that Overeem would have won because of his physique. He looks like he has that much muscle, that much more slightly bulkier size, that he would actually be delivering much more powerful strikes and punches, uppercuts, and just be, when he's delivering on the offensive, he'll be delivering heavy shots, but that wasn't the case. The significant difference between the two guys is, apart from their physique, is the age. Overeem is 40 years old. Volkov is just still in his early 30s, 31 years old. And in this case, for the CYRILGANE versus ALEXANDERVOLKOV fight, I would have said this fight would have been very similar, but the fight probably would have been a lot tougher for Volkov because Gane is around the same age as him. He's still young, 31 years old. He can still recover quite relatively quickly. He'll also be fast on his feet. Stand-up will be good. And we saw that in the fight. He was really on the strong, aggressive offensive in the cage there. He was really delivering heavy shots. The leg kicks were there. He was putting a lot of pressure on Volkov. He could recover really quickly. He was really, he was really fast on his feet. His stand-up was good. So for me, there's not much else to say here. It was a good fight, entertaining fight. Then what else I can say? It's I thought, again, if the fight wouldn't go in Gane's way, then I thought, it would have been very, very, very close. There would have been a draw, but Gane proved to be and was deemed to be by the judges to be the better fighter, the superior fighter, and that was the case. He won via unanimous decision. But it would have been interesting to see how the fight would have panned out if either one of these guys took the fight to the ground. I didn't watch before watching this fight. I didn't watch him before making this podcast. I didn't really, and I should have done this, I didn't really go back and actually watch any of these guys' past fights to see how good their ground game is, because of course this fight is testament, and of course the past fight with Volkov and Overeem is testament to how good the stand-up is between these two guys. They do have a good stand-up, but of course in this case I will re-emphasize again that Gane had a better stand-up, and so therefore he won the fight. But I've never seen these two guys actually wrestle or grapple or clinch, and actually just to see anything to see, and just to confirm and give me just a sense of how good either one of these guys, how good their ground game actually is. So there's not much else I can say about this. It was great. It was a good fight. It's really entertaining. And now CYRILGANE is, after the fight in the post press conference, he did hint that now he doesn't see any reason. He would like a title shot, and yes, I agree, he should have a title shot. Just checking the rankings here. I think checking on Wikipedia was stated he's what ranks as number 3 in the heavyweight division. I'll put the brightness a bit. I should refresh the page actually. Yeah, he's ranked as number 3. So a title fight between him and Francis Ngannou has not actually watching the latest mixed martial arts news coming from one of the mixed martial arts news YouTube channels and podcasts. The fight between Derek Lewis and CYRILGANE has been booked. So CYRILGANE has been booked. So I thought, based on what he said, I thought they would have just been straight up just had a title fight with Francis Ngannou and CYRILGANE, but that's not been the case. So and that's been booked for sometime in August. So I look forward to seeing that fight definitely happen. So moving on, the next fight that got my attention was the Tim Means versus Nicholas Dolby fight. Tim Means, the Dirty Bird. Tim the Dirty Bird Means. I don't know what sort of nickname that is. I was talking about that with someone at work today, and when they say Dirty Bird, it's to do with something like maybe the guy is a bit of a womanizer, something like that. I have no idea why he was given that nickname, but it is what it is. So yeah, this was a fight that I thought would have been close between the two guys. Tim Means has a very good ground game. Nicholas Dolby has really good stand-up. Tim Means, his ground game looks really good when he last fought, which was against Mike Perry. And Nicholas Dolby, I should check that actually. Nicholas Dolby's last fight against Daniel Rodriguez at UFC 255. His stand-up was really, really good. He moves really well on his feet, and he's a really fast, aggressive, fiery fighter. So for me, what was I going to say? It would have been a close fight. I mean, it would have been hard for me to make a prediction on this fight. And I say that because, well, one of them has a really good stand-up, the other one has a really good ground game, in my personal own opinion. So if one of them manages to take the fight to the ground, which would, in this case I'm referring to leaning on the side of Tim Means, then they'd have the advantage because they have really good ground game, really good wrestling. But of course, if before the fight actually gets to it's taken to the ground, if the stand-up for Nicholas Dolby is that good, he could potentially win with a knockout or a TKO. But again, before we get the fight to the ground, I was saying earlier, just to someone I was speaking to about this, before we can take the fight to the ground, if the other person has a really good stand-up, then you got to get past that stand-up, because even rushing in for a good takedown, if their stand-up is that good, they can defend themselves well in that takedown. But overall, the fight was really, really entertaining. Despite what I said about Tim Means and his stand-up, both of the guys' stand-up was really, really good. So, what else would I say about this? Tim Means did win by unanimous decision. What did I write here? Yeah, and not much else I'll say. I mean, just the way he handled himself with that and defended himself in the clinches and the takedowns. It was just one takedown there that I think he managed to get, and he defended himself and really performed and controlled his opponent really, really well. So I'm not really sure what else I can say about this. If I was discussing this with someone else, probably they'll bring up something else that I can talk about, and just something which but at the moment, as I am now speaking about it on my own, just haven't thought about. But yeah, overall it's an entertaining fight, and I liked it. And yeah, Grant. Yes, not much else to say now. The other fight I want to talk about was a fight which by now is not really, it's old news. The Anderson Silva versus Julio Cesar Chavez Junior fight that happened last weekend. Now, I know that Anderson Silva, since being cut from the UFC, did want to stay fighting, want to remain fighting, did, I think, go to one championship to try and fight there. Lo and behold, they said no to a big name such as Anderson Silva, who's been competing in mixed martial arts since 2006, a really long time. He's a pure veteran of the sport of mixed martial arts. They said no, so he ventured into boxing, and so I did hear about him going into boxing and this fight that was going to be coming up. That was in the works, but I didn't know it was going to be happening this soon. I just wasn't following the story that closely, probably as I should have been. But in any case, when someone told me about it, the fight had happened. I went and I had a look and I watched, and I've got to be honest, I lost interest even before halfway through the event. It just wasn't entertaining. I mean, fine, Anderson Silva can box, but he's not a boxer. Julio Cesar can box. He's a boxer. And the reason why I say that is because he's good at boxing. Anderson Silva's good at boxing. Obviously, it's one of the fundamental attributes you have to perform well in mixed martial arts. At least if you want to be a well-rounded mixed martial arts athlete. But it just didn't really have the overall event. I think probably coming from Anderson Silva more than Julio Cesar. It just didn't have the competitive edge, and what had the overall event, the fights had more of an exhibition-like edge, an exhibition-like feel to the fight. And from my personal opinion, I'm not sure if people who are going to be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast will agree with me, but how I felt about it, I mean, it just didn't have the exciting appeal. I mean, the Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather fight, even though that was an exhibition fight, that was a lot more entertaining to watch than this. I mean, despite the name power of the two guys, especially for Floyd Mayweather, that was a far more entertaining fight to watch. But this just didn't really have that entertaining element to it at all, in my opinion. I think probably the only funny or humorous thing that I took away from the boxing fight was the brief period in which Anderson Silva was backed up into a corner of the ring, and he's just gesturing and motioning to his opponent, just jabbing his gloved hand towards the ground. Show me what you've got. Just do your worst. Kill me here now if you have to. I'm saying that to Julio Cesar. I find that was funny, but it just didn't really. I just didn't find it entertaining. It was more of a boring boxing match. I mean, the guy did win the fight in the end, but it just didn't really have the entertaining aspects for me. Just didn't do it for me at all. I mean, I don't know how else I can put that point across to the audience, whether you're watching or listening. I don't know how much I can emphasize and re-emphasize that, I just really didn't have that entertaining aspect for me at all. So, after watching that fight, it did also just bring up some thoughts in my mind, some questions. Why has this guy gone into boxing? So, he was asked about this, I think, in an interview some time ago, and I remember the reply he gave was that, well, I like fighting, I like combat sports, I don't want to stop. Understandable, because most of these guys, once they've finished and once they retired and they've reached the age of their late 30s, their early 40s, or for some of them, if they keep on competing till maybe probably they hit their mid 40s or late 40s even. At that time when they're forced to retire, they're forced to stop. They really don't know what to do with themselves, because this is something that they've been doing for. It's a sport that's in their blood. They live for this sport. It's the reason why they get up in the morning. If they weren't doing this, they're probably doing something else, and for a lot of them, they probably would be getting into trouble. It's because of this sport that has kept them on the straight and narrow, just kept them out of bad situations. So I can understand that aspect. Once you kind of like had to stop doing what you love, because you're getting too old, but maybe because the promotion that you work for, fight for, your employer has probably just had enough of you, and they can see they probably just can't see the they can't see you bring in any more. They just can't see you bringing in any more profits for them as a business. Then naturally, yes, and understandably, they are going to let you go. So that aspect I can understand. You just whether you're earning a living for it or just doing it as a hobby, if you love it, you're gonna continue doing it somehow. And then there's the money aspects, which I haven't heard anything from him being said about this, about whether there's a financial aspect to it. But of course, naturally, there will be. I mean, most people, despite the notoriety around the UFC and how how badly they pay most of their athletes. In mixed martial arts and combat sports, most of the athletes that are enjoying a fairly comfortable salary annually. So I can understand that, of course, money will be another aspect as to why he wants to continue doing what he's doing. In boxing, you get paid a lot more than you get paid in mixed martial arts, because the pay-per-view numbers are far higher. A good example of that is the Ben Askren versus Ben Askren versus Jake Paul fight, and the Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather fight. Even though Ben Askren lost to Jake Paul, Ben Askren still took home $500,000, $500,000, which is still, even though he lost, that's still a life-changing money for many people. So it just goes to show the big difference in terms of salary, in terms of the financial aspect of the sport, of the two sports, even though they are related. But it just shows you the big difference between what the athletes take home, whether they win or even lose. So for me, that would be another obvious reason as to why he's going to boxing, for the financial side of things as well. And speaking of the Paul brothers, speaking of the Paul brothers, there is a comment that I'd like to just discuss that Jake Paul made in an interview recently when he was interviewed by TMZ Sports. And I thought it was just okay, fine. He was asked a question, a typical question many young people are asked when they're doing something and when they're like in their early 20s or late teens. And he was asked by TMZ Sports, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And he replied, anything is possible. I think I could be fighting Canelo for the WBC belt. The sky is the limit. It's just about how serious I'm going to take it, and I do take it seriously, more seriously than 99% of these pro boxers. And when he said more seriously than most of these boxers, he actually gestured the speech marks gesture with his hands. Now, I've always thought to myself, and a few people who know me, and those people who also follow the sports of mixed martial arts and boxing and other combat sports, I've kind of made it clear that I don't like Jake Paul, and that's obvious. Even they don't like Jake Paul either, but they respect the facts. They respect the reality that what he's done to get people's attention while he's in the sport. And then in that, just by doing that, whether he wins or loses a competition, a boxing match, he still gets lots of money. He still gets lots of attention on him, because he has his fans from his YouTuber fan base and from his Disney fan base that be tuning in to watch him and to, of course, watch him win. And he'll also have his haters who will tune in to watch him lose. And combining all of that, because of the name power he has on the internet, on YouTube, that does give him an advantage to achieve such a high pay-per-view number, and achieve such a big salary, big take-home pay. And of course, on the other side, that also benefits his opponent. Whether his opponent wins or even lose, they still take home quite a big purse. Now, the point I want to make here is that Jake Paul and Logan Paul, especially Jake Paul, I mean, Logan Paul for me is less annoying, but still, these two guys. I mean, Logan Paul made a comment before his fight with Floyd Mayweather when he's speaking to MMA Fight Academy, I think it's called, or MMA boxing. It's a particular combat sports YouTube channel. He said that he started this comment. He was answering a question, and he started his answer by saying, "I didn't choose boxing. Boxing chose me," and it just felt so awkward and weird. That it's that sort of answer, that sort of comment comes from someone who's been in the sport for at least 10 years. I mean, that comes from someone who's a veteran of the sport. He's not a veteran, neither is his brother. They're far from being veterans, because, I mean, for the most part, for the better part, they haven't fought any professional elite level boxers, especially Jake Paul. Jake Paul has fought basically just, I think, 2 or 3 YouTubers or people who really don't come from, or who don't hail from a boxing background, who don't really hail from a combat sports background. Okay, fine. There was Ben Askren, but the exception with Ben Askren was that Ben Askren didn't have very good striking capability. His ability with his hands for striking, for punching, for boxing. No disrespect to Ben Askren, I like him, but it was pitiful. It's pitiful. You know, he's better on the ground in wrestling, but unfortunately, in boxing, wrestling you're not allowed to do so. Your wrestling skills when it comes to boxing are useless because it can't help you, it won't help you. So, you know, it also goes back to the point that I made in my other podcasts, my other videos, and also when I'm speaking to my friends about this, that for me, even though these guys on paper are, you know, even though they got the license to train and to compete as professional boxers, for me personally, I will never see them as pro boxers until they have fought someone who is a professional elite level boxer. Not even someone who maybe has so many wins, as in so many wins more than they have losses, but someone who's been in the sport, who's been competing in the sport for a long time, who has a lot of experience when it comes to boxing, a lot of experience, way more than these guys. I mean, these guys have only been in the combat sports scene for just for the past 2 or 3 years, and in that time they've been fighting people who are not really proper boxers. They don't hail from a boxing, or at least they don't hail from a combat sports background. So I don't see them in that light. I don't regard them as professional boxers. They might be on paper, but in the real world, you know, practically no, they're not proper professional boxers. Despite all the pay-per-views and the money and the attention that they're bringing to themselves by just how they act, especially Jake Paul, how they manage to get people to just start talking about it. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I mean, you see people doing it on Instagram, on Twitter, reposting and posting and sharing all the content when they're in an interview, and they just answer when they're answering questions and they give certain comments, you know. So I just wanted to make that point. I'm not hating or anything like that, but it rubs me up the wrong way when someone hasn't really earned their stripes the way that other people have done. So I mean, and it's like someone said in a particular podcast. Yeah, it was Michael Chandler with is it Joey busting it with Joey or something like Joey TV. I can't remember who it was. Actually, let me check my history. It was an interview with Michael Chandler, and there was something that was said there that's about how people, just because of their name power, when they go into something like a sport such as boxing, because of their name power and because of who they are, and because of the amount of attention they bring to their events, they can kind of just skip. They don't have to join the queue. They can just skip everybody else and just more or less just stroll to the front of the queue. And they'll just enjoy the benefits of just having the name power, bring all the pay-per-views and bring in all the money, you know. Yes, it was Michael Chandler on the Pat McPhee show. Good channel, and I do like McPhee's content, how he speaks, and very articulate. So yeah, I mean, that's just one of the reasons to why these two guys, for me personally, it's a hype train, and I think it will eventually come to a stop one day. I'm yet to be convinced that they're taking it seriously, especially Jake Paul. Okay, so guys, I think I'm gonna wrap this up here. I think I mentioned everything I want to talk about. Can't really think of anything else. So yeah, I mean, I will, and again, hopefully someone has approached me to be co-hosting this podcast with me. So that is in the works, and we're trying to make it happen. Just trying to find a time that we can both just get together online and just do like just a test run, see how things go. Hopefully if it does go well, it can become a long-term thing for the long haul. And yeah, we'll just see how things go. But guys, for now, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you did enjoy my content, if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to leave a like if you're watching on YouTube. Also, please do subscribe if you enjoy my content. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, and on Apple iTunes. And also catch me on Instagram. My name's IkoJarko1, and on Twitter and Facebook, my name's IkoJarko. Thanks.